Qualys has brought together vulnerability management and patch management, letting security teams discover vulnerabilities and apply patches immediately, all within a single, unified app. Sign up for a free trial of Qualys VMDR, vulnerability management, detection, and response today at securityweekly.com/Qualys. Are you an enterprise dissatisfied with overpriced analytics software that can't keep up with modern data? If so, then GravWell is the solution for you. GravWell is an unstructured data analytics platform for enterprises who demand total data visibility across their network. GravWell lets your security team go beyond the SIM and fuse data sources to correlate and answer questions you didn't know needed to be asked. Go to gravwell.io/securityweekly for an unlimited data trial and gain uncompromising visibility today. The biggest problem in security that remains unsolved is flat networks inside the cloud and data center that allow threats to move laterally and compromise vulnerable targets. But microsegmentation using traditional firewalls is too complex and time-consuming. There's a better approach: Edgewise Zero Trust Auto Segmentation. Edgewise is impossibly simple microsegmentation. Using the identity of machines and software that are communicating, Edgewise offers the strongest protection that adapts automatically to changes. Protect any application in any cloud without any changes to your network by visiting securityweekly.com/Edgewise. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Would you like to have all of your favorite Security Weekly content at your fingertips, learn about upcoming webcasts and technical training, or just wish you could hang out with the Security Weekly crew and community? Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe, where you can sign up for our mailing list, join our community Discord server, and subscribe to all of the shows on the Security Weekly network. That's securityweekly.com/subscribe. Also, make sure you visit securityweekly.com/webcast to register for our upcoming webcast on October 28th. Learn how to build an integrated platform with Mimecast. On November 5th, Deepwatch will show you how to build proper metrics and key performance indicators. And on November 12th, Secure Circle will show you why you should stop trying to discover and classify data. And now, the security news.
Paul, before we get started.
Yes.
How do you know you're talking to an extraterrestrial?
How, Larry?
Lots of probing questions.
Oh. You know, Larry, I accidentally sprayed deodorant in my mouth the other day, and now I have this weird accent.
Much like you, Paul, I was trying out some of my new jokes at the morgue, but the audience is pretty stiff.
It's just...
Wow,
hilarious.
I'm off to watch the debate. Fuck this.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, it's time to drink straight from the bottle.
Straight from the bottle. You know what? And we might as well just start with Donald Trump, his Twitter account.
Great segue.
Being hacked. I don't know. I don't see a whole... I don't want to say
only
it's
by someone with 197 IQ and 15% of the password.
Damn right.
Apparently that's what he said. But I mean, did you guys? I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore.
He did say that.
He did say that.
That was in the campaign event.
Yes.
That was what got me all upset, because he actually did say you don't need security. You can't be hacked because it would have to have an IQ of 197 and at least 15% of your password.
Yeah.
So that's the bumper sticker that I want to put on the back of my truck. I got 15% of your password, baby.
Yes, I like that, Joff. It's a good one.
15% of Big Daddy 69 is BI. So.
Oh yeah, Doug just did. He just went up me.
So apparently someone guessed his password, is what I read.
Yeah.
Not exactly. I mean, yes, somebody gets his password, but if you read far enough into at least the article I was looking at, the person that discovered it or guessed it also worked with him back in 2016, I think they said.
2016, yep.
And recommended the password that he actually guessed to be a good password.
Interesting.
Now, Jeff, my
let that
understanding
one
was
sink in a little bit.
Batman.
The password was MAGA 2020 Bank.
The password that he recommended, I thought, was like exclamation, I will make America great again 2020 exclamation with camel case and that type of stuff in there. Not MAGA 2020
That's not what I read.
So
The way I read the article, no, that's not. That's
He probably got a hack because he's like, that's too much to type. I want to make it MAGA 2020.
Change my password to 777.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Password's my luggage.
But some other things to note about this particular article. 1, bad passwords. 2, no two-factor authentication on allegedly the most powerful Twitter account in the world with 78 million followers and the president of the United States.
Yeah, I find that kind of hard to believe. That I'm not saying this is fake news. I don't have evidence in either direction, but I'm skeptical after 15 years of covering news stories, right? Like sometimes my shit detector goes off and I'm like, I need more evidence before I truly believe it.
I don't know, though. I mean, that ship kind of sailed. I mean, they had that whole big fight with Obama back in when he was first elected because he had a BlackBerry and there was this huge row about the president couldn't have a device that and all this stuff. And they kind of conceded on that. And I don't know. I mean, I think the guy's just like a lot of high-level people, and he probably said, I don't want this crap, fix it.
Sure.
And he said, this password's too goddamn hard to type, fix it. And people don't like getting yelled at. And if I've worked for some CEOs that if they said, set my password to 777, and you said,
do it.
Sir, that's really a bad idea. They'd be like, okay, you're fired. Get me somebody in here who'll fix what I want. And
that's the thing, Doug. I agree. I mean, it is a thing, and we've all encountered it.
Now, on the converse, what the person who allegedly, so if we're going with we don't have enough proof, that the person allegedly did to guess the password was completely in the wrong because there was no authorization. I mean, this is not pen testing. This was a hack. I mean,
it was a hack.
A high-profile one. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go to Twitter and start guessing people's passwords. That's illegal.
Yep.
That's probably the more interesting angle on this one for me, because as Doug pointed out, people in positions of authority like that this is bound to happen regardless of who the person position is in power and what they have power over. This is bound to happen. People are going to pick crappy passwords. We all know that, right? The more interesting, Larry, is the authorization. Is it legal or illegal to guess people's passwords? But there's two things there, right? Guessing the password, actually doing something with it, right? And what you do with it could almost be three different things.
I think guessing it's not illegal. It's the acting on the fact that you guessed it, which of course you'd have to do to find out if you actually guessed it correctly. But I mean, it's that access parts where it starts to be illegal. But
is logging in but not doing anything? That's a that's a legal question. It's a great legal question.
But access is what it says in the law. It says accessing. So
the law is up to interpretation, Doug.
Well, I imagine Secret Service has a few things that they had to say about it.
But I will also.
One of the articles I read was that the gentleman did speak with the Secret Service, who knows what will happen. But my understanding, the article I read was that they were quote very gracious for him reporting it, and he had tried to report it through multiple venues and got no response.
Interesting.
So he went to the media with it.
And I'll say a lot of people that are like celebrities, at least this is what I was told, they have a lot of people accessing those accounts, and they often say, here's the password is whatever,
right?
And we all go in there and we check it, and I've got my handler here that checks this, and I've got this person who posts a snarky message every morning at 7 a.m. And so, it's
Hey, Paul wouldn't know anything about that.
No chance.
Let's move
It's
along.
interesting. I'm curious how the algorithms handled that, because there's like, especially for verified accounts, there's secondary validations that happen, and when access is done, it is one thing that the password is that, but there are controls in place, especially for the verified accounts. So
in fact, verified accounts have to be two-factor.
Correct.
Unless you're the president of the United States. Make this shit go away. This is inconvenient.
Well, there is that. But for the rest of us,
two-factor, he used numbers and letters in his password. That's two-factor.
That's two-factor, baby. Hey, you know what? I
thought
agree
you were
with
going to say
Paul.
he used his right
think
and his left hand.
I think we should move on to another story.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm sure he's a one-finger typist, but go ahead.
I was just looking at stories that we had in common. Nss Labs has shut down. That was in the news.
Wow.
Now it's interesting. They say it was due to COVID-19. Due to COVID-related impacts, Nss Labs has ceased operations on October 15th, according to the company's website.
Wow.
Kind of interesting. Security testing firm. Involved in multiple multiple lawsuits in both directions. I think they got sued and filed lawsuits as well.
Which is interesting and kind of sucks. Like, they did produce some interesting and good research, and sometimes like they were able to push the envelope because of their name over other places that may or may not have been able to do that. So I'm curious as to the real reason behind it, and then I'm curious as to what the fallout's going to be later.
It looks like it's an interesting example of, companies that don't survive the COVID thing, but many of the companies that I've seen, brick and mortar shuttered around in my neighborhood, very often they were companies that were already having issues. And, this was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Agreed, Jeff.
Yep. Jeff, that was some of my understanding about some of the reading I was doing about their closure. The wording was that they were incompatible with the quote IPO lifestyle and the venture capital lifestyle, in that the venture capitalists wanted them to push some specific product and develop some service lines, which again never really took off for whatever reason, and then blew through a ton of money and with nothing to show for it.
Yep.
I mean, that happened a lot back in like the first internet bubble. I saw these companies had the same problem. They had some decent ideas. They were putting things together, and then they got involved with the venture capitalists. A lot of money poured in. They weren't really a mature enough organization to process that money flow, and all of a sudden all the money was pouring down the drain, and the next thing you knew, they'd blown a bunch of cash, and then the investors are pretty upset, and the next thing you know, it's like, okay, we're back in the garage.
Which is probably why to this day I'm always just kind of dubious about companies that publicize that they've gotten the next round of funding and how many millions of dollars that they've gotten investment. I'm probably still smarting from working at a startup back in that original first internet bubble, the .com days, and executives blowing through so much money. I mean, the company that I worked for, I was a consultant. We were doing billable work. We had customers. When new management came in, the venture capital came in and took over the company, it took them a while to figure out, but they found out that nobody had done any billing for the first year and a half. So all the work that we had done,
oh my God,
nobody collected on it.
That's interesting.
So anyway, move along.
Discord
Nothing
app.
to see here.
If you're running the Discord app, you may want to be aware that it did have a series of vulnerabilities, 3 to be more accurate. One revolved around context isolation being disabled. And I haven't dug deep and looked at the code or anything, but it says a web page's JavaScript can affect the execution of Electron's internal JavaScript code on the renderer and preload scripts. And the demo that I watched was a YouTube video being embedded inside of Discord, which must trigger some JavaScript execution and blurring the lines between what's executing within Electron and what's executing on the site of the link that you're pasting in to do that rendering, so you get the preview of the YouTube video, right? We see that in Slack as well. When you post a link, it posts that preview. There's some intermingling going on of JavaScript, was just one issue. And then we found another flaw that allowed executing the JavaScript. And the second bug was cross-site scripting. The two bugs together allowed the execution of JavaScript in iframe. Then the researcher found a third bug that expanded the attack surface on the app, a navigation restriction bypass that together with the above two allowed for remote code execution. Just props to the researcher for being damn persistent on this one, right? Like, I'm not going to find one vulnerability. I'm going to find 3 that take this all the way to RCE. Like, props to you. That was awesome.
Oh, man. And cross-site scripting, of all things, right? The most common thing ever, right? Yep. I mean, we find cross-site scripting all the time.
And all over the place. I think that's what makes it really one of the more interesting attack vectors, because of all the different places today that you could potentially get cross-site scripting. I think it's interesting.
Yep. So much stuff. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Larry.
Go ahead, Doug.
Oh, I was just going to say, and because it's so common that browser components are embedded in just about everything now, that it becomes an attack that has so many different vectors. It's one of the oldest approaches.
Well, it's interesting. This was, I guess, Electron is a client-side JavaScript interpreter, much like a browser, right?
Yeah,
for local
exactly.
applications. That's what a lot of applications are written in today that run on your desktop. I think Slack is Slack also in Electron as well? Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting bug.
The other one too that I think is kind of fascinating too, Paul, is this concept of the chained attacks and having to do multiple layers deep. I mean, this is really what we're getting left with nowadays. You're attacking the hardware, aka some of the stuff we talked about with Eclipsium. We're talking the lower levels of the operating system or the firmware, or we're left to have to go multiple layers deep through all of this crap to get where we want.
Yep. It was a Japanese bug bounty hunter, Masato Kinugawa.
Okay.
Props to you. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, that's a very cool.
And obviously patched Discord, right? Yes. What else do we have?
I would
Go
like
ahead,
us to talk a little bit about. I think Lee and I both had this same article, but NSA released a list of 25 vulnerabilities, CVEs that Chinese are using. One of the things I thought that was interesting about that article wasn't it just last week that we were talking about, I forget who the interview segment was, but we were talking about the difference between the raw score and the temporal score, whatever you do it. I set out to I didn't get very far because I've been busy, but I wanted to look up all the different 25 CVEs and see what their original scores were. Especially there's one in there that dates back to 2015, and why would that? Not that they're using it as a target, but they're using it as a target because it's still out there, right? And why would it still be out there? Is it because it had a low enough score that it doesn't have to be patched, or are there what are the mitigating circumstances?
It's because it's in Oracle WebLogic.
That was exactly
no
what I
one
was gonna
patches
say.
that.
It's like Oracle. It's working. Don't touch it.
Yep.
Because if we touch it, we'll have to call them, and then they'll send 5 engineers, and it'll cost $100,000. So no, don't touch it.
Or no one gets paid because our payroll won't process. If we touch
exactly.
It.
It's just don't.
Same sort of thing with the Cisco gear too, Jeff. We were just working on a test not that long ago where depending on the industry, it's hard to get stuff patched. You don't have any downtime, or you have 1 weekend every 2 years to get something patched. And this organization was running a Cisco device. I don't even know which Cisco device, but it was running Cisco iOS 11.2.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pix.
But I guess my question is not so much. I mean, I know we all know the reasons why things don't get patched, but in the context of last week's discussion, in terms of prioritizing vulnerabilities, do companies stop it? We don't have time to do it, or don't touch it, or going to break, or are they justifying it by coming up with using some of these new technologies and tools to prioritize the risk down to say, okay, we're good?
I don't think they're doing that either. I think the same people that haven't patched this are the people that don't have the resources or the knowledge base to go in and prioritize vulnerabilities. I mean,
or they're having a tough time convincing their management, and now they can say, well, the NSA found that China was using this, so we should patch it. I don't know if that's a bad strategy, to be honest with you. If you're having trouble with buy-in on fixing stuff, you've got other fundamental organizational issues with communication and trust and processes.
But it still may not work. You may go to management and go, the Chinese are using this to hack people, and management goes, and management goes, have we been hacked? Right. And you go, well, no, we haven't been hacked, but we could be hacked. And they go, but have we been hacked? And then they go, well, until we come back and see me when we've been hacked. Now, they'll fire you when they get hacked, but I mean, you can't win. I mean, I've been sitting in that chair and had them sitting there saying, but we haven't been hacked. Why would the Chinese come after us? The Chinese will never come after us. It's impossible. They don't even know we exist. Blah blah blah. And you're just like, they'll find you, but it's a really tough sell.
Yep. Yeah. So I think this is an interesting kind of academic exercise, but I don't know. I think
I was a little. I mean, again, we go back to the fundamentals and what attackers are really using, which you can't argue with the Chinese or an APT using exploits, right? That's kind of their MO. That's kind of what happens. However, that's usually an initial access vector. It doesn't mean that they're not using phishing. It doesn't mean they're not leveraging additional things. And once they're in, it is the common things that are within a network, the fundamentals that people should be fixing, that they should be focusing on. I mean, the exploits and patching should be a part of your roadmap and your holistic approach to security, yes, but it is probably not even on my top 5 of things to start with. If you're an organization and you're trying to start with something, patch management isn't the first. Like getting a good grasp of user education and password management, that network segmentation of some sort, host-based firewall, like there's a million fundamentals that are really quick
asset
wins
management.
with asset management, with low
logging.
impact. So I don't know. This seems like
Knowing
it's
what
a
the hell you
small
have.
distraction from things that are important because it's from the NSA. Yes, I believe it's important, and yes, all they're saying is China is using these. However, using something like this, an executive may take this and say, patch management's now our single sole focus. Like that's what China's going after, so this is what we need to do. That's kind of deterring from the point and maybe derail some of the security roadmap that maybe has a better prioritization of actual business risk and actual risks from a security standpoint.
But that's the rub. I mean, you go in either direction. You could patch nothing and focus on other things, and likely you're still going to get owned and have a really tough time. You could focus on patching everything, and you're going to miss out on all those other things and have a really tough time. Obviously, the answer for organizations is somewhere in between, and where in between is really why we can do this show every week and probably talk about this subject and have it be an engaging conversation, because that's the tricky part in security.
So real quick, NSA's guidance in this document is general mitigations include, number 1, keep systems and products updated and patched as soon as possible. 2, expect that data stolen or modified before the device was patched will not be alleviated by patching. 3 is disable external management capabilities and set up out-of-band management networks. 4, block obsolete or unused protocols at the network edge. 5, this one kind of gets me, isolate internet-facing services in a network demilitarized zone. Is that a thing anymore? And finally, enable robust logging of internet-facing services and monitor the logs for signs of compromise.
Sounds like a breeze.
I want to pick on the logging thing, Java, and I believe Tyler both mentioned it. If you don't patch your things that are contributing to your logging and someone could subvert your logging is useless. So there is it's interesting. There's a certain level, I believe, of patching you need to have. I don't maybe know you need to patch everything, and Lord knows we have a tough time reaching that level. But there is a certain level to make sure that your other defenses are at least having integrity.
And you got to have asset management.
No,
you got to know what you have, right. And you don't.
If you're going to patch stuff, you got to know what you have. I mean, that's just.
And there's people that don't even know that.
Yeah,
I mean, they may have.
I guess the way I see it, right or wrong, is patch what you can, and the stuff that you can't patch, that's what you want to pay particular attention to in terms of logging. I hear what you're saying, Paul, but maybe you're not logging the device in the system. Maybe it's more network activity. Maybe it's perimeter, assuming you have any kind of segmentation, which maybe you don't if you're struggling with these things. Mm. But I guess my patch and harden what you can, because that's presumed to be safe to some degree, and focus your attention in terms of logging and monitoring on the stuff that you haven't fixed.
It's really interesting. I find it fascinating that in the past 15 years, right, we still come down to this kind of debate and issue of what you should patch.
15 years. We've been talking about 15 years.
Yeah, it goes. You're right, Jeff, and it goes way beyond. It goes way beyond that as well. I find it interesting that we're still, in this debate.
But seriously, does anybody in the commercial world have a DMZ anymore? I mean, functionally they do, but does anybody call it a DMZ anymore?
Jeff, I think last week I think you pointed out intrusion detection as an outdated term, which I agree with, and I think this week we're talking about DMZ as an outdated term, and I agree with. I'm not going to play devil's advocate there. I think those are outdated terms, and we just. I mean,
literally in the early days, it was there's the internet, which was portrayed by a cloud on your network diagram,
ironically,
and then a perimeter router, a firewall, and then you had a DMZ, and then on the back end you had another firewall and router, and then your internal network. That didn't last very long.
how can we even call anything the cloud anymore? Like, you take Azure and AWS and you do something like federation or SaaS and single sign-on, right? Like, the fact that these SaaS applications live on some piece of hypervisor somewhere and all your information's on it, like, is that not still part of your central environment?
It's kind of like you're slowly fighting your way back to a flat network. It's just now it's a dispersed flat network. It's like
it's an IPv6 flat network.
Yeah, we're scattered across the globe. We're running IPv6, but every single device can see every other single device in the in our network. And I mean, I've seen that. I've seen people going there. They take
what you need is an SD-WAN and a SASE and a CASB.
There you go.
With zero trust and AI ML protecting it all.
Right.
EIEIO.
Bingo.
I'm way behind. I lost count of how many drinks we have to take.
Just chug the bottle, you'll be good.
Pretty much.
Or not.
All right.
Skull.
Oh, well, since we're talking about patching, and we kind of, and Larry, you hinted towards it earlier about, we kind of touched on CFAA type things, and I thought this was kind of interesting. My story number 7, there was a Apache Struts 2 remote code execution vulnerability. This is not new. September 9th is where this dates back to. And I was looking through the exploit as just kind of an exercise of just reading exploits and trying to understand them, because I still think that's really fun, by the way. And when I was looking through this exploit, I did a little more research, and I found that the original exploit was posted to full disclosure on October 13th on 2013.
Yeah, was this the Apache Struts one that hit the credit reporting agency? I can't remember the one. It's been so long.
I'm not sure if it was.
I think so.
It quite possibly.
Because you said Apache Struts, and I was like,
yeah. But what's interesting now is this post to full disclosure is showing the exploit against a live target. Now that target doesn't exist anymore, so my friend Bob tells me. It was against no better way to show off your exploit and go, hey, it works, than to post a full disclosure and show your results from a live target on the internet.
That's except you put your name on the
right. Maybe not so elite, right?
Yeah, and I think they just used the live shell from the 2013 exploit, and they're just executing it differently here or they're executing a different exploit utilizing that live shell code.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, different commands and some different stuff in the exploit string. I didn't fully unpack, what was happening there because, Java, but yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
140.211.11.
Something, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of, I had another. Yeah, I had another exploit that I thought was interesting. This one was for TikiWiki CMS Groupware 21.1 authentication bypass. And when we were talking about vulnerability prioritization earlier in the week on Enterprise Security Weekly, I said, sometimes when we talk about is there an exploit available, how much weight does that carry? I brought up, what if there's a vulnerability that doesn't really require an exploit? Like, the exploit is authentication bypass, and you don't really need to write code to do that. And then when I was looking through the stories for this week, I'm like, here's an authentication bypass that greatly benefits to having some code to be able to exploit it. I'm like, so there goes my theory. Overgeneralization about authentication bypass. Some require code, some do not. And what I thought was really interesting about a couple things on this vulnerability, you have to keep brute forcing the admin password to trigger certain code within the application that will essentially result in the admin password being set to blank. And then you use Burp Suite to intercept your authentication request and remove the password from the password parameter. I was like, I thought that was interesting. I don't remember if I've ever seen a vulnerability like that. Probably have, but the other, and I linked to the GitHub so you can go look at the exploit code and all the details.
Well, I haven't read the article. Is it a vulnerability, or were they triggering something that was built into it, as a fail-safe to allow admin access?
It was a vulnerability in their code. And when I tried to figure out what that vulnerability was, I was brought to the tiki.org wiki that described their login documentation. And I tried to read it, and my head was going to explode. And not because necessarily it was overly technical, but I just could not follow their logic and surmised that they needed to really think through and have a couple of whiteboard sessions about how their login process should actually work. And that's what probably resulted in this vulnerability, is very poor understanding of how the login process works.
So they generate a hash and set the password to pass if they're in the clear, or otherwise make it an empty value. So nobody's going to keep password in the clear. So basically, you're tricking it into think you're already authenticated by a blank password value, and they just screwed up the hash validation.
They just screwed up they screwed up the logic, right? And I think what you're describing, Lee, is right. They screwed up the logic in the login process that led to this vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no. Look, writing software is hard. I'm not faulting the developers at all. I just thought, as an exercise of reviewing of vulnerability and exploit, it was really super interesting and lessons to be learned about implementation.
Well, I'm not going to throw them under the bus here. I mean, trying to come up with a good login function is not exactly trivial if you're writing your own. But, man, I think somebody needed to think this through a little more on the whiteboard.
Yes. Agreed.
That's one of those programming tasks, though, where you've got all these boxes to check, and somebody says, I got it working, and they check the box, and the next thing you know, you got a problem.
But along those lines, Doug, you bring up a great point, because it was almost like in the process, they got some feature requests.
Yeah.
That was like, hey, we want to get a notification when someone tries to log in as the admin password so many times. And they suffered from... I don't know what to call it, but like trying to implement too many different features.
Too many features problem.
Too many features problem.
Too fancy.
Yeah, for lack of a better term. And in that process is where they introduced
I've
like
seen
trying to be more secure and say, I want to get an email when someone tries to log in unsuccessfully so many times, was one of the reasons why that led to this vulnerability.
And I've seen that in other designs on like the Post-it note problem, where we had something worked out. It was all up there. We had all the modules laid out. And then somebody came in from the marketing group and they said, oh, but it needs to be this. And then, or even when you weren't there, somebody come in and tack onto it. And the next thing you know, it's gotten kind of convoluted. And now everybody's like, we got a deadline. Let's get this done. Next thing you know, you roll out bad code.
Yep. Did the article say define brute force? Did they indicate ballpark how many attempts it took?
Oh, exactly the number of attempts. Jeff, so admin login brute force results in 15 invalid user or password errors. Then you get just before the 50th request, and the messages change what comes back, and now the account is locked. And then in the database, that's when that prov pass field that I was looking into, which wasn't the password hash, but yet another hash value field that was checking. I don't understand how they were using it, to be quite honest. Once you got to that point after the almost 50th attempt, that's when the account was susceptible to a blank admin password.
So 50 is not a lot, but it's 44 more than what PCI would allow.
Right. And it's interesting, they were trying to lock
not to mention remote administrative access is kind of frowned upon.
The bug was in how they locked the account. They didn't lock the account. They kind of unlocked the account after so many attempts.
We used to call that fail open.
Yep, they failed open.
Yes.
So that was while we're on the super nerdy stuff, why you would use post instead of get. And here's where I get locked out of Medium, and I have to, don't tell Medium, but if you open up the link in incognito mode, it works. Shh, don't tell them.
Thus creating an authentication bypass.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. So they talked about the security reasons that you would use post over get. And there was a lot of interesting little tidbits in here. One of them was URL length between post and get, right? The URL length in a get is different from a post. There is accountability. It's interesting. They say in some documentation that they link to from the W3 consortium, they said use post if The user is being held accountable for the results of the interaction. That was kind of an interesting take on it. They also provide some examples where in a GET request on standard web servers, the data is logged inside of the logs. So if you're querying an application for a phone number and the phone number is correct or incorrect, conceivably, that value would be logged in the logs, whereas in a POST request, it would not be logged.
POST is always about the user side of the transaction. So it basically says, we have no responsibility for this. This is all on your end. So when you receive the data, you have to validate it. We're just handing you what you asked for.
Right.
GET has more accountability on the server side.
But I think in the article opens up, but just saying like our overgeneralization is when you want to do read operations, you use GET, and when you use POST, you want to create.
Right.
But that's not a golden rule. No. After you read the article, you're like, yeah, there's some other things.
Both those functions can be used in different ways. So they have switches that allow all kinds of things. So it's yeah.
So my fellow old timers out there, help me out, because I remember 20 years ago in the early days of web applications recommending something about POST versus GET or GET versus POST, but now I don't remember which way it was. But I remember guys I used to work with used to talk about it all the time.
Yeah, the answer is it depends.
Well, no, it didn't. They were emphatic about it. I just don't remember
what he's talking about is GET was always like when you say GET, you're assuming you're getting what you want. But if you're getting data with POST, it's all on you. So that was, like I say, the POST was a local responsibility. The GET was assumed that it was a server responsibility. And then there was people that just use the same one for everything, and they just set it differently if they were reading or, yeah.
So, Doug, set me straight. Which is preferred, generally speaking, classically, historically, a GET or a PUT?
Depends. Well, put is different from POST.
Put it
put is different from POST.
I think most of the early developers used GETs all the time when they were receiving things. So if you were trying to get information from a web server,
right,
and you were writing some local app, and you said, "I'm going to reach out and pull something down," you used a GET. A lot of people use GET all the time.
But GET, your data is in the URI.
Yes.
And in POST, it's in the header request header.
And
Big
a lot
difference.
of people didn't use POSTs because, one, the very name of it implies that it doesn't do that. You know, POST was always this thing about, like, I mean, I've heard people say this, even though it's not true. People say POST is when you want to put something on the web server.
Right.
GET's when you want to pull something on the web server. And I'm like, no. That's not really how those things work.
So far.
These are like POP and IMAP. They're two things that do different things in different ways, but ultimately they have the same purpose, and they can both be used in both directions. And so don't start assuming stuff about these commands. But a lot of people that were writing basic apps that were pulling things down were using GET commands all the time. I don't know why. I mean, that was just because of the name of it, I guess. But people that explored these commands and started understanding how this stuff was coded started saying, wow, I could use a POST command. Some of the early hacks were people saying, oh, GET's restricted, but POST, you could do whatever you want, because the developers on the server didn't understand the two things. And they were like, well, POST could never be used to pull stuff off our server, but it could.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was all kinds of naive things like that because people just didn't understand the commands, and they're poorly named because they sound like they do something very specific, but they really can do all kinds of things. And a POST can GET, and a GET can POST.
I think that sums it up nicely. Joff, do you have anything to add to this? I know you've done some.
He's the expert.
Django development.
I'm just sitting here listening to all the fun stuff. You can't forget on the HTTP verbs that GET will generally leave more evidence behind in web logs based on the number of parameters that you're going to potentially put on the end of the URL. So you'll leave more evidence behind when you're using a GET as a verb. As a general rule, based on what you're doing, and it's generally good practice not to put additional things such as parameters inside the URL. Especially if they're things that are things like session token identifiers and that kind of thing. So that's it. That's what I got to add to this.
Yeah.
So Joff, is this article teaching us something new, or is it rehashing stuff that we learned 20 years ago? Maybe it's evolved, or is it reversed?
I'm not really sure. I suspect the article is not teaching us a damn thing.
I suspect the article is teaching us stuff we should have learned 20 years ago.
I agree, Doug.
Well,
I agree with Doug's assessment.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yep.
Okay,
Raising awareness.
I guess
raising
it depends
awareness
on your point of reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not new, groundbreaking work.
No, but
no, I definitely wasn't implying that.
Somebody's figured out, hey, there's such a thing as a buffer overflow. Let's run around and teach people about it. Or a race condition.
Back to basics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is one of those back to basics things, all right? Because actually, buffer overflow is a classic example. I mean, who's going to succeed in today's world doing a traditional stack-based overflow unless you're using some sort of IoT device that is ancient?
Right. I mean, well, if you move to heap buffer overflows, you're may get some Chrome 0 day under your belt because
that's.
But I think this is the point. I mean, to Jeff's point, right? We can look at get and post over time, and how applications today have really overcomplicated it, and we kind of need to rethink and just make sure we're doing proper threat modeling and proper design of our applications to use things appropriately, knowing how they were exploited in the past and today. Buffer overflows are in the same class of things, right? We talk about traditional buffer overflows. Joff, you mentioned stack-based buffer overflows, right? But now we fast forward to today, inside the browser, heap-based buffer overflows have always been a thing. Memory corruption flaws in things like FreeType in the font library is what led to Chrome's demise in the latest 0 day that affects Google Chrome.
You're shifting onto the new one. I want to make one. I agree with you, Paul, and I think it underscores what Corey said in the first segment, which I was kind of cringing over. While I agree with him, he said, we can't ultimately rely on any technology or automation. There's always got to be a person there. Mm-hmm. I agree with that statement. My concern is what makes me cringe and get off my lawn is that young people today, they've never learned the basics because they've become accustomed to all the technology and the automation and the tools that do the stuff for them. So stuff like this article, which is going back to the basics, I guess it's a good thing ultimately if they're going to learn this. But God, what happened to the historical body of knowledge just moving forward?
Hang on, Larry.
Jeff.
Well, all right, go ahead, Larry.
Just real quick too, that if you learn about that stuff and you're starting to make come into this industry, blog, YouTube, Twitch, any of that stuff, because when we go look at your resumes and you posted this thing about this old thing that you discovered, like that shows propensity to learn and be able to write and
very true.
Just go do it and share your knowledge, Paul. Like that's why we started doing this thing 15 years ago, because we had knowledge that we want to share, and it may have been new to us,
right?
But it may not have been new to somebody else. So put that shit out there.
Oh no, and I've had that in my previous presentations. Like it doesn't always have to be new, right? That's not what we're getting after. And I think to both of your Larry and Jeff's points, that if a new developer comes up and starts writing applications and is largely thinks they're protected from buffer overflow attacks, therefore never learns about how previous attacks work and starts writing code, that could be a dangerous situation. They need to understand how it works without some of the protections that are in place. Jeff, to your point, understand how it works without the automation and do the manual investigation gives you a much better place to be when you are using that automation and you can question it, right? I want developers, junior developers, and junior security analysts to question the automation, to question the automated protections and go, wait a minute, that if I do this, that's supposed to protect against it, and it doesn't, right? So we have to understand how things work without the crutches, so to speak, and it's kind of a bad analogy, but the crutches, so that they can write very resilient code, so that we can go through the manual investigation of looking at the packets and the logs and understanding where the automation failed.
And I would go so far to I agree with both of you, but I would go so far as to say, because I get this all the time, or at least I used to when I went to real conferences. I want to be a hacker. I want to be a pen tester. I want to be a red teamer. I want to break into cybersecurity. If it's not in your chemistry, hearing what Larry and Paul are saying about just having the curiosity to tear things apart and figure out how that works,
right?
Because so much is automated these days. You might not be a hacker.
Oh, totally agree.
This might not be the right industry.
But don't forget,
at least that particular segment.
But don't forget, evolutionary coding means that people learn from stuff that exists, and so bad code breeds bad code too. So sometimes this going on YouTube, I mean, I'm not dissuading people from doing this because you should be doing it, but you have to be careful what you're doing when you go out and you watch and you look at other code and so forth if you're not examining it. If you just go, here's a way to write a logon script, I'm going to copy this off this YouTube guy, and that guy's an idiot too, and that guy learned it from an idiot from before that, and 32 years ago I wrote it, and God help you, and it's a piece of junk, and it just sort of persists out there. So keep the curiosity, but dig deeper. Don't just take the first thing you see and say that's the solution, let's do it, or you're not a hacker. Now you're just a copycat, and you're going to use bad code. So
we used to call them script kiddies. I mean, I was a script kiddie. I didn't write O-Days back in the day, but I agree with you, Doug. But I wanted to have the last word. And if you're wanting to be in this industry, if you're wanting to be a red teamer, pen tester, security researcher, whatever the buzzword of the day is, and you don't have that thing in your head going, why does this work this way? How does this work this way? If you don't have that curiosity,
you got to be able to dig a little deeper, just like that 3-level attack we saw earlier. If you're that kind of person who says, I'm going to keep going till I get that remote code, that's the person that gets there. If you're just like, oh, here's a quick solution, let's just use it.
Well, but get started. I mean, it might be 3 layers, it might be 10 layers, and there's the 85th attempt at going 3D.
It's in layers.
You don't know where you're going to go, but if you don't have that curiosity to start peeling away the layers and dig into it and try to figure out how it works, I'm just saying you may not be a hacker.
Break it, fix it, make it better.
There's plenty of other jobs in this industry, but don't call yourself a hacker.
He's not going to let me have the last word.
No. Oh,
no.
But
keep going, Doug. Come on.
The conversation just makes me so excited, right? All the things you guys are hitting on are just.
Is that what that smell is?
Yeah, it's just. But it's so. I mean, it's embodying the hacker spirit, right? Of curiosity, of persistence, of wanting to get to the answer, wanting to understand things, think about things in a different way. I think that, and Jeff, I'll let you have the last word because I know it's really important to you. But I think that. Don't worry about always doing something new. It's okay to go understand what is what we would call history in the past in information security and technology, because I think one of the things that I've learned that when I listen to our guest and my fellow hosts on the show, when you describe something that maybe is truly new, what I rely on to understand that is what I've learned from understanding from the old, right? When I learned about that first stack-based buffer overflow, I apply when the researcher from Black Hat that we did an interview this summer was talking about the article that I was trying to get to, which was exploiting things in the browser, right? I relied on all that experience of me just understanding what was old, that we talked about the first buffer overflow in a Frac magazine long ago. I relied on that knowledge and experience, and I encourage new people in this field to go study and write about, to Larry's point, write about and blog about what has happened in the past and what your take is on it. Because then the other point is, someone new coming in this field may have a new take on a buffer overflow that I thought I understood before. And I'm like, that's a really interesting way to think about it, right?
It's a discipline that all of us, whether we're co-hosts on this show or just more senior in our field, I think it's a discipline that we all need to have to be careful to cultivate, is not rolling our eyes and sort of being dismissive of the newer people coming in and discovering something old. And I'm guilty of it.
Trust me too. Listening to the show for the past 15 years, I'm guilty of it.
Not me. I nurture those flowers.
No, you have tenure. You can do what the hell you want.
That's true.
I have a sidebar real quick, but I want to get to my sidebar, but I have to come up with the last word.
Our sidebar's right here.
We're giving you the last word right now, Jeff.
Come on, Jeff, hurry up.
The last word is try to, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to run down a rabbit hole. And even if it doesn't go anywhere, I was going to give an example. Many of you know that I have a cabin in my backyard that I built from scratch. When I got to the point where I was putting up the roof, beams, whatever, I don't even know what they're called, and I had to cut them at the right angles so they'd be the right angle,
the correct angle, not necessarily the right angle.
Yeah, it'd be bad if you read that in a book. Cut them at the right angle.
And when you're connecting two pieces of wood, they have to be opposite. It adds up to 90, I think. But anyway, I got out paper and pencil and started trying to figure out the geometry of it. And I'm like, okay, if it's this long, and I was trying to, y equals mx plus b, and I was doing all this math. And at some point, I said to myself, I've seen people that build houses. They're not doing all this math. Mm-hmm. So I went and found a carpenter and said, how do you do it? And they said, oh, you just use a carpenter square, which happens actually as a triangle. But
which happens to be an implementation of trigonometry, for fuck's sake.
Well, it's complex math, but it's an example of automation. But I knew how it worked on the back end. But if you hear about the pitch of a roof being 5'3", it's literally 5 inches on the one side, make a mark, 3 inches up, make a mark, and then use the straight edge, draw a line. That's your angle. It's magic. But most people don't understand how it works. That's the point I'm trying to make. My sidebar is, Paul. Now's probably a good time.
That wasn't your sidebar?
Oh, that was the sidebar.
That was my final word.
This is Jeff's math for building. So you end up with sidebars, sidebars, bars that don't even exist in this reality. It's just that the math gets crazy after a while.
I mean, for fuck's sake, we just got past a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and now he's going for the sidebar.
And the ghost of Isaac Newton appears.
But the sidebar is, Paul, I went and watched Hackers again because you encouraged me to. I still think it's a horrible movie.
We went from building a roof to...
I'm just trying to change the pace a little bit.
I will just maybe save that. I disagree, but anyway. We've got some other stories to cover.
Do a couple other stories.
We'll come back to
We're going to do a math story later.
We'll fight over Hackers at the end.
Later.
Oh, God.
Anyway, there was an O-Day. I don't even know how to set the story up now. I love you guys.
Along, Paul. Pick another one.
I love this show. This is just... irony. My story number 13, WordPress sites receive a update security plugin after a vulnerability is discovered in Loginizer, which is a popular plugin for protecting WordPress blogs from brute force attacks. Turns out that it has a flaw that multiple flaws, including SQL injection and cross-site scripting, and I linked to the researcher's post that goes into excruciating detail, which I love, and they did a great job of explaining why this is a thing.
I'm sorry,
Paul,
I just have to laugh,
I don't
right?
think this is irony. I think this is the opposite of irony. Do you know what that's called?
What is it?
Truth?
Wrinkles?
Wrinkly.
Wrinkly. Yes.
Wrinkly. So go figure. A WordPress plugin aimed at security has security flaws.
Right? That was
never happened before.
They also talk about XML RPC as it relates to WordPress, which you should either disable or neuter. There's people, and I thank you, community, for pointing out in our own WordPress site that on the surface it may look like XML RPC is enabled, but go ahead and try and query it because it won't work beyond a certain point because of the way it's configured.
And for the record, that's not permission.
Right, that is not permission. Thank you for testing it, and thank you for reporting it. Multiple people have.
Yeah, I've seen it too. The return statement from the PHP says MAGA 2020. It's fantastic.
Bang.
If you send it a GET request, it says XML RPC must be done with a POST request. Is the message that it comes back with? Ironically enough. But
it's good security when you have a password that ends in a bang, and you tell your kids what the password is. is, and they can't log on because they're typing
the
out
BANG. Right.
That's precious.
Because XML RPC was mentioned in here, WordPress does have a full REST API, and it is largely not documented very well at all. And if you're struggling with it, feel free to drop me a line, and I will send you my code if it helps you figure that stuff out, because I spent many weeks doing that, and it is security-wise much better for the REST API. But the documentation sucks hard. So please reach out to me if you're struggling with that. The FDA has approved use of a new tool for medical device vulnerability scoring. And I don't know, on the surface, I was like, FDA kind of sounds like they're making this process complicated. They're, using language in there about, what is acceptable and what is not, and like typical FDA style language, produces scientifically plausible measurements and works as intended within the specified context of use, which I just love reading that statement, because as a hacker, go back to our previous conversation, you look at that and you're like, well, how do I use it as not intended and outside a specific context of use? But I got to a point in the article where I was like, oh, I get it now, because they say that there were vulnerabilities that were scored incorrectly. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, it was a high severity vulnerability because you couldn't execute remote code or access remotely access information, just remotely alter limited specific functionality. The problem is when you put this in the context of a medical device, those remote functions altered are very high severity when it's this particular type of device. So now we're right back to vulnerability scoring and prioritization. And in a medical context, I was like, oh, now I know why there is a different standard that has been now approved by the FDA for scoring medical devices. And I get it, and I think it's a good thing.
Pacemakers shocking your heart when they're not supposed to is, probably a little bit higher score than
WordPress vulnerability. Yeah.
Well, we give higher severity to things that we call cross-site scripting and SQL injection and remote code execution, but that's not really what it's about. It's about what I can do with that vulnerability in the context of what I'm attacking, and that's where I thought this was a really good thing.
Is there a death probability category? Like if there's
I hope so, Tyler.
I'm sure there is.
Death probability, yes.
At least internally, people probably have that, because like Tyler said, if you're messing with pacemakers, that's pretty bad. And
it is pretty bad. It's like when we talked about the sex toy denial of service. That was really a different severity level, in my opinion, than lots of other denial of service attacks.
Yeah.
God forbid
denial of sex toy denial of service
is running on your sex toy or your pacemaker.
Let's hope PHP never goes near a device that's
your
anywhere.
Third kid was denial of service, Paul.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if PHP gets into medical devices, I quit. That's it. I'm fucking out.
At least don't get any medical devices.
PHP, it's already got Modbus. Like, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, then there's that. Oh, you had to... Let's find a happy story. Now we have to find a happy story.
Yeah, everybody brought everybody down.
It's not
got a happy story out there.
Well, let's talk about a different story.
Sex toy.
Let's talk about the sexy, hot, exciting new certifications.
So this was sometimes I really don't like knocking articles, but so the title was 8 new hot cybersecurity certifications for 2020.
Hot.
I guess I was stuck on the word hot. Like hot. I'm like, what could be hot about a?
It made you click through, didn't it?
Yeah.
It did. It was a catchy title, and what also
where are they?
What aggravated me about this story was you had to click through 9 pages to see all of the different. And I
you know what really grinds my gears? Having to click through 9 pages of an article just to make a joke.
Like, you know what though? There used to be a time. Now I'm on my grinds my gears. Right? I'm on my soapbox when there used to be a time when you saw an article like this, and it was when more people printed stuff out, and you could go to the printer-friendly version, and it would let you read the article in almost plain text. Right? I'm like, I love this. This is great.
Kids, that's called a newspaper.
This article didn't have that, and a lot of articles don't today because no one prints stuff out to read it. They just read it on their devices, whatever. Anyway.
What about reader view under Chrome? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, I have to look into that, Larry.
Stand by.
So one of the comments, though, we'll just kind of double click on an aspect on one of the 9 pages that I painstakingly, I think I got to 7 before I gave up.
All I can say is nope.
Yeah.
Reader
I'm on
mode is
7
nope.
now. That actually the 7th page actually sounds legit.
Uh-huh.
But that's the first one that sounded legit.
Again, we're picking
Still
on the
hot
article.
page 8, CISSP. Wait.
It's not. Again, we're picking on the article. It's not horrible. 100% horrible, right? But maybe pretty close. But anyway, but I think there's a place for this, and maybe also not a place for this. So there's a quote in the article that says, talking about certifications, it says, for example, if I need a new security engineer to work on vulnerabilities or cloud security, I look for certification or years of experience operating solutions in those disciplines. I find the empirical knowledge of how to use tools better than a paper certification.
See, this is one of the things that I talked about recently on a webcast. Like, the older generation and those who have had to come up through the ranks, in whatever discipline they're in, we've had to know a lot about a lot of things. And that's just, in order to be part of the industry, you had to do that. You learned. If you didn't know it, you learned. And we learned how to learn. I think there's a problem that we're getting into now. There's a dichotomy here where we are so siloing and so specializing in individual areas of IT that we think we have no room to expand, and we're limiting our frame of reference and our point of view, honestly. Like, we aren't letting a lot of these people focus and grow and find disciplines outside of their comfort areas. And I think these certifications, while they may be useful, and I see from a hiring standpoint why they've kind of moved this way, but from a industry standpoint and long-term longevity of people coming into this industry, I think they really need to understand how to continually learn things they don't know and explore disciplines that are outside of their comfort zone and AO. Like, we all had to learn how to do wireless, do physical, do exploit dev, do recon, do OSINT. Like, all that was part of our job just to become, to break in and be a script kiddie. And now OSINT is its own discipline. Exploit dev is its own discipline. People in those areas don't like to kind of branch out because it's very specific, very niche. You need to specialize, but you also need to not limit your point of view and frame of reference. Otherwise, you're not doing a service to your clients or those people you're protecting. You have a very limited frame reference and a very limited mindset for what you can know and understand.
I have comments, but everyone else is getting fidgety. Joff and then Lee.
I about fell off my chair. Tyler's becoming an old guy, man. I love it.
One of us.
That's all I got to say.
Oh, Lee.
We've created a generation of cyber snowflacks. Go ahead, Lee. I'm sorry.
Yes, we have. So I was actually surprised when I went through the list that the very last one, the healthcare information security privacy practitioner, not picking on that certification, but I was thinking with the year we'd have, anything healthcare related would be popular just because of all the work that's going around testing, managing, handling PHI, and there's a lot of bad information out there about how it should be protected. So I was just surprised that wasn't higher up on the list. I was also surprised to see the CISSP still in there, as were others, but it was decent rounded cert.
My comment was basically horseshoes and hand grenades, right? Because we think about close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I think
nuclear weapons,
nuclear weapons, right? I think we can extend that to cybersecurity skills, and not 100% of the time. But here's the thing: let's say I'm looking for someone that has to have some skills in cloud security or building out cloud infrastructure, right? If I find the right candidate, and maybe I want to do my build out in AWS, but that person's got experience in some other cloud platform, if they have the right attitude and aptitude, to me that's close enough, right? Hence my analogy to horseshoes and hand grenades, right? But I think that's also the problem that many organizations have when they go look for talent is they're like, we need an AWS engineer. And I'm like, no, you really don't. Like, maybe you're not looking for someone that has zero experience in cloud. And no knock on someone that has zero experience in cloud, because maybe you're a developer, social engineer, a million other different skill sets, and there's room for those. Don't get me wrong, in cybersecurity, we need people with very diverse skill sets. But I think we kind of run into that problem where we tend to get too specific in what we're looking for, and we just need to broaden the search depending on our job description. When I go hire someone that I know is going to have to do something with building out cloud infrastructure, I want to see the right attitude and the right aptitude first and foremost, right? I maybe want to see that hacker mindset and maybe some experience with whether it's a certification or a hands-on experience, or maybe they've done some, they got a GitHub and a blog. That all weighs very, all those things weigh heavily. I think they need experience with, I did a gigantic Azure implementation. I'm like, we're in AWS, and if they're the right candidate, to me, that's close enough. And I think that's in the skills gap. That's one of the gaps, right, in the way that we hire candidates. That was my point on that person's.
Let me ask a question. Anybody can answer. When you think of certifications, do you tend to think of certifications as a way to tangibly demonstrate your experience? Categorize it, classify it, however you want to refer to it.
No, it's demonstrating knowledge, not experience, Jeff.
Yeah, it depends.
Or is it a training? Depends on the certification. Because I think in the early days, certifications, I think they first came about so that they could try to demonstrate. I could be wrong, but this is my take on it. The very first certs were really put out there to try to find a way to demonstrate, no, you do have the knowledge, you do have the experience. Maybe it was leaning more towards knowledge. But and it just seems like it's gone way beyond that now, to the point where I think certifications are viewed more as a way to get some knowledge and education, which is bad. And maybe that's part of why I have a problem with them, is because just because you can pass a test doesn't mean you know anything.
Well, I always looked at certification from a couple of perspectives. So CISSP was like, they required some industry experience, and it was supposed to be kind of a capstone to prove that you could function at a certain level. So it was supposed to be about a combination of things. I do think that some certifications that are just like these sort of pinpoint focus things. So
a lot of this article was the pinpoint focus.
Yeah.
thing,
So I mean, I'm a programmer. I've been a programmer a long time, and I need to learn, a Flask. So I need to learn Flask. I need it for my job. I need it quick. I got the experience. I've got the resume to be a programmer. I can go to a 1-week class and have somebody teach me Flask, and I'm probably going to be fine. But what happens is
probably less than that, Doug, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know. But just as an example.
I learned Flask right now.
That was but I mean, what happened is there's sort of this, everybody wants a shortcut. I mean, one of the most common questions I get asked at the university is there a way to do this quicker? Because people want to get into an industry as fast as they can and start making money. And so so marketing people and sales people say, it's a whole market niche out there to say, you want to be a programmer? We can teach you to be a programmer in 36 hours, for $5,000. Sign up, get on board, and change your life, because a new world is coming for you.
But that's the difference between knowledge and experience.
It is. No, I mean, I'm just saying, I think certifications are really both of those things. One of them is not so great, but the same certification that you hold may be great for you, but it may be some other person gets it and they just don't have the background, but they were able to take the test and pass. That doesn't mean they're the same person. So you got to look deeper if you're interviewing people. You have to be and it is a trap. I see it all the time. Companies go in, they go, here, all we really need is they got these 3 letters after the name. Boom. That's the person you hire. And I tell them over and over again, like, that's so foolish. You got to look deeper. You got to ask that question. What's your favorite network port and why? That's one of my favorite interview questions of all time.
But I think there's a way to gain both knowledge and experience when you're getting into fields of technology in general, and that is, I look for candidates that are pursuing a certification in some capacity and are looking for an internship.
Yeah.
Because that's going to get them the experience.
You bet.
And when I'm hiring at that particular level, if I'm looking for an intern and they go, look, I'm in a degree program, and by the way, I've got, a Pluralsight or whatever, account, and I'm learning this stuff, and I want to gain some experience. Again, if they have the attitude, the aptitude, and the willingness to really put in the work, I'm going to give you the experience, right?
But don't go take the S+ test and then come and tell me you want to be the CISO.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, Doug.
I get that all the time. And here's this person sitting there, and you're interviewing them, and they're going, and I'm like, okay, so you want to be the CISO? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so you passed the S+, eh? And they're like, yeah. And I'm hoping to someday take the CISSP when I get that 3 years of experience.
But I'm all for giving folks the opportunity to have experience if they can show the willingness to learn the knowledge.
Oh yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's what we're saying,
but I mean, it's all about where you're looking. I mean, if I'm an entry level person, then it's like a huge plus. Somebody comes to me and they say, "Oh, I got some certs when I was in college or high school, and I don't really have any experience in applying for an entry level job." Awesome.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
Where they come in and say, "I want to take over and run the place," and you know, I've got an art history degree, and I went and took this cert class for 3 days, and now I'm there. You know, and they don't really know what TCP/IP stands for.
But I think there was an article we covered last week, and we covered it on BSW as well. And it was a Medium article by PrivSec, right? We really dug into a certain aspect of it deep. And one of the things in that article was hinted towards, you know, the age of the certification. And I think that needs to be taken in context. So to your point, Doug, if someone got a bunch of certifications in programming and then went off and did like something completely different for a while and then came back and said, well, I want this job because I've got some certifications 3+ years ago in programming and I haven't done any of that since, I'm going to be like, yeah, we need to evaluate that differently than someone that may have gotten a bunch of certifications in, let's say they got an OSCP, it expired a long time ago, right? But they've been doing pen testing and maybe security research in some capacity for a few years, and then we're applying for a job. I'm like, all right, like you use certifications to get in, and you were in that area for a while. So the fact that like they're expired and they were years ago, it doesn't really matter to me, right? Your experience kind of supersedes what certifications you have.
I agree. It's a holistic thing. You have to look at the whole package.
Yep.
You have to talk to the person. You have to ask them questions that suss out what do they really know. And then you can start making a decision as this person's a good fit for the job. And so be careful. Don't just say put the letters after the name and everything's cool.
Yep.
You see that, and it worries me.
Agreed.
Are we ready to talk about hackers yet?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
why not?
Any other burning stories that anybody else wants to do?
Uh-oh.
Well, I had story number 1 was 5 things you can do to secure your home office without hiring an expert. I thought the article was kind of bogus rather. I think the router recommendations are pretty sound. I really like Firewalla. We did an interview with the founder.
Yeah.
I think if I were to have to recommend, a platform that is pretty high.
I've got one. I've got a Firewalla Gold.
Yeah.
I've got one. I played with it. It's a really nice product. It's very seamless. It's something I would recommend to a family member. It doesn't take a lot of technical capability to put it in. It's got really clear instructions. You put it in, and it definitely would improve security on a home network with not a huge investment of knowledge. And that I liked it.
If we look at the home office, right, I would lean more toward, because the rest of the recommendations were kind of bogus in my assessment, and I would recommend that auto update everything would be kind of high up on my list if we were looking at this from this perspective. Use some kind of URL filtering, whether that's a client or a Firewalla kind of devices doing URL filtering. And some of the management software that I have for managing my kids' time on devices, it also has, hey, if they go to a website that we don't recognize, we just block it, which can be kind of annoying. But on kid devices is a really effective measure for making sure they're not going to, download some malware. I mean, not 100%, but it helps, right? In my experience, it helps. I think a password vault, something I need to get better at with my family. I think that really helps. Segmenting your network, multi-factor authentication.
Yep.
All those things would be higher up on my list than the other kind of fluff that was in the article.
But you have to weigh risk, return, and support, because I'm telling you, when you start recommending devices to your family, you are going to be supporting these devices with your family.
Yep.
And that was, so be careful about, I mean, you got to protect them. I agree, but be careful about how it's very easy to overcomplicate this stuff, because we're kind of inclined to do that. And you have to keep it really simple, or you're going to be on the phone a lot.
At MFA, there's been this resurgence of SMS-based MFA is better than not having MFA at all.
I don't disagree with that. I think
right.
Yeah.
You can poke holes in it. It's kind of that argument of SMS being quote unquote bad is sort of akin to the, well, because I can read the audio vibrations or the radiation from your monitor, I can snoop keystrokes. You're still raising the bar, right? I mean,
you're forcing them to have to social engineer your cell phone provider to maybe get your number transferred, which, I mean, we've seen attackers do, and you may think that now you're a target, but like I just remember an article where there was a home user, right, that they just happened to have a 3-letter Twitter handle, and they were victim of that attack. And I want to just call that out, that stuff does happen, but that use case in and of itself shouldn't be the roadblock to you using SMS as your multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, I would agree, right? I mean, you're still doing something that is better. Could you be subject to attack? Well, I mean, if you're subject to some sort of SIM-like attack where somebody goes to the local phone store and claims to be you and all that good stuff, well, you're probably going to react to that pretty quickly, right? You're going to know very, very quickly.
Right.
Could it be potentially damaging in the interim? Sure. But you're going to go into cleanup mode very, very quickly.
And hopefully some of the responsibility, Job, to your point on those attacks, falls on the cell phone providers. I haven't seen a huge resurgence in those attacks. Hopefully the cell phone providers have taken some responsibility there.
We hope so.
We hope.
We know the fact is that they're minimum wage employees that are working in those storefronts, right? I mean, so it's as much training as they can give them to make it better. We certainly hope that that's occurring. It's a responsible thing to do, but then again, it's kind of like hiring interns.
That's where that whole threat profiling comes in, right? Like, if someone's physically going to attack you that way and they're fairly determined, there's much easier ways. They're going to go like steal your laptop, steal your phone. That's probably a much easier way to do that. Really, if you're worried about SMS attacks, the big concern is your device that you're signing into. If that's compromised and you have something like iMessage or Google Voice where those messages can be retrieved on that device that's compromised, that's when it's a bad idea. Otherwise, I don't think the phone itself, the phone platform, and the SIM level attacks where you're attacking networks and or issues around that's more for an advanced adversary or an enterprise. Like if you are the CISO or are the budget holder for a multi-billion-dollar company, that might be an attack that you should worry about. Otherwise, enable freaking multi-factor, and if you're just using SMS, that's fine. Like, make sure your device doesn't get compromised.
Yeah,
I'd almost recommend
there is a special category there that you just touched on, Tyler, and that is if you're a high visibility individual, you probably have to take different precautions because you are going to be targeted, and you probably will be targeted in that way because you're low-hanging fruit from that perspective, right?
I think my recommendation in that light would be, for your email account, maybe not use SMS authentication, because your email serves as the multi-factor for maybe a bunch of other accounts. Protect that with its own password, right? Like if you're going to have one unique password, make that for your email. And by the way, get a YubiKey, and that's your second factor for your email. Protect your email as your crown jewels, because someone can take over your life if they get to your email. And that's something that I practice, right? Unique password for your email, multiple email accounts, and it's tied to a physical hardware token. Really, right? Job's holding up a YubiKey for my email, right? Your other accounts you may put into different buckets, but your email is so important.
That single sign-on is important.
Great little device, fantastic. They also do near field if you are willing to take that risk for your phone, and as a second factor. Really great thing. Just touch the key and it enters the one-time.
Tyler, did you get your ring? He did. Token. It is called Token Ring, which I really liked because I managed a Token Ring network, which is interesting.
Oh, wow!
Right? Remember that? Amazing technology.
It wasn't.
I hacked the Token Ring network once.
I did too, because I would break the ring and the whole network would crash. It was awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, really, I think people need to start thinking about that single sign-on, like from what Joff was saying, that single sign-on, which is your email account, right? Like whether you're using Gmail or 365, whatever it is, single sign-on really needs to be thought of differently and treated like your password vault.
Yep.
That one that sticks in your memory that you're utilizing, because it is a password vault at this point. Single sign-on and your email is now your authentication into.
I think your
just
email
about
is one
every
of
service.
your email is one of your most critical assets.
Because it's not just your single sign-on; it uses OAuth to grant access to other applications as well. So it extends beyond email. Jim Manico was on Application Security Weekly, I think 2 weeks ago. And it very much reminded me, he's like, hey, look, people misuse OAuth. OAuth was designed to grant a limited set of permissions to another application to your account, but people misuse that. His description of how OAuth should work and how it's abused, to me, was just beautiful on that show. It kind of like made me think, I'm like, oh, like kind of reminded me of like how OAuth should be used and how it's misused, but also how much you should protect your Gmail account, which is not just your email, but also how you grant potentially access to a number of different accounts and authorize another application to access aspects and different roles and services within that account, which I thought was interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I think back to the work from home thing, we're really at a pretty critical point of, I think, like we predicted when this all initially started, the level of risk to the business as a whole, as this work from home extends, has now started to hit the precipice. We've started to see exploits coming out. We've started to see video conferencing hit. We've started to see a lot of the application, exploits happen. So not just doing security basics, which you should be doing, and almost no one is from a work from home standpoint. Like that segmentation is not happening. Kids devices that are doing school from home with those horrible education apps that some people should donate some time and help rewrite some of the security in those. The iPads and mobile devices with all the apps that the kids are playing with, the games, like the home network is a hostile environment and should be treated as such. And we have all these corporate devices that are out there that aren't checking in, aren't getting the regular patches. The logging is deprecated because there's just no way to push that through and do video conferencing at the same time. The wireless is probably and most often not secured well with multiple devices and IoT on it. Like it is a really, really bad time from a blue team and defensive standpoint if you've not adopted a couple good strategies, which starting to look at some of the zero trust, the hardening and not trusting your network, having the always on VPN, making sure that split tunneling is not enabled if you're using some VPN, really looking at how you're hardened and getting logs from your devices. Like there's a ton of things here that from a work from home, and we all get it, this is hard and it was like shoved on everybody, but we're going to start seeing some really bad breaches, I think, inside the next year because of where we're sitting from work from home stuff.
Tyler, I just want to say that I think that most of us probably would pick Hackers, Sneakers, and War Games as our top 3 hacker movies. And I really truly believe that amongst those 3, your number 1 is going to be your number 1 hacker movie based on your experiences and your personality. And Jeff, to your point earlier, I think that Sneakers would be your number 1 because, in my opinion, knowing you for as long as I have, and sharing more cigars than I could ever count with you, and more drinks than we could definitely ever count, that Sneakers would be your number 1 because that fits your persona, your experience, and your background. I think that Hackers becomes my number 1 because largely I'm a product of the 90s, right? Kind of grew up in the 90s, and that's one that I identify with. And I would never fault anyone for moving around those top 3 in any particular order based on their experiences, background, and personality.
Okay. I agree with your premise that the movie that you find to be the favorite is probably based on, just say, age. I mean,
sure, yeah, agreed, yeah.
I got to go with War Games then.
Well,
I'm not faulting it. If you're in that top 3, man, it'd be hard pressed to argue.
I mean, I kind of see them in order based on when they came out: War Games, Sneakers, and then Hackers. I think they're all important, and I shared last week. War Games is that's how hacking was done back in the day.
Time, right?
And the basic methodology of not having a particular target in mind, but just throwing stuff out there to see what worked. I mean, that's still largely what's done today. I mean, APTs and nation states and all that kind of stuff notwithstanding, there's still a lot of targets of opportunity, and who can we find that's vulnerable to this, and then what can we do with them? At least in the commercial world. Sneakers introduced more the what we know as red teaming, physical security penetration testing. I mean, that was what I wanted to do.
But there's a lot of cryptography and spycraft in Sneakers, which is why I believe it would rank number one on your list, right?
Definitely,
and I watched that just the other day, Jeff. Yes,
I watched Sneakers over and over again. I haven't gone back and rewatched War Games. I haven't gone back and rewatched Hackers until last week because I promised that I would. And I know you prefaced it with you have to get past the interface, but the interface is so freaking.
It's hard to get past. I believe it's hard to get past.
I want to,
but realize I can tie back a lot of things in Hackers that I think are somewhat esoteric, right? When we interviewed Whitney from Rapid 7, she was talking about social engineering and some of the techniques that we use today. And you can kind of point to the interesting Hollywood kind of spin on that, where he talks about his BLT drive, right?
Right.
But that's an interesting thing to really dig into. That maybe back then you didn't necessarily have to be as accurate in your social engineering, and you could reference something like my BLT drive fried. Today, someone might pick up on that. Back then, they might not have. And they very effectively portrayed social engineering and so many references into hacker culture. And again, it's the style, the costume design, and the music that really, I think, make Hackers something really, truly special.
I know it's the music and the styling, because it's like, I see it as that's the hacker culture. That's what every DEF CON and B-sides and every security hacker conference tries to celebrate.
Yeah, and it's very much celebrated in Hackers because the references to Emmanuel Goldstein, the references to real hacker handles, the references to real books that they're passing around on the table.
And the first book that they're passing around is the Orange Book.
The Orange Book, right?
The Orange Book. It's in there.
I mean, they did their homework, and I think in very strategic areas, kind of hit on things that still resonate today.
But then you get to the actual, Tron
hacking the Gibson. I know. Oh, it's an atrocity.
So
they did themselves a disservice with all those other really accurate references. The accurate social engineering, the portrayal of hacker culture, I thought was really awesome and engaging and on point. And it does the movie a disservice when they go into the actual interfaces, right? When they're hacking the Gibson, and it's that ridiculous interface, and the whole character of the Plague is ridiculous, right? But it's like interesting because you look at that and you're like, oh my God, like just like hand on my forehead. But then you think about the female, I forget the actress's name in the film, that chooses a really poor password. When we just talked about that on the top of this segment, right? Like our password was God, right? Like that's still very relevant today.
And I want to inject something for the listeners, because a student sent this to me not too long ago. There was a television show, and I had never seen it, from 1983 called Saint Elsewhere, and it's set in a hospital. And in the second season of that show, there is a minor story arc, and I went and scanned through it. It was on Hulu. I went and scanned through it, and they're actually hacking the hospital. And they had a whole little story arc about hackers, and they were using a bulletin board system to get the passwords that had been posted for the hospital, which were all very, very insecure. And this girl was breaking in, and she was adding records to the hospital database that were the names of presidents. And it was so, I don't know, reminiscent of the kind of things that went on in that era. And if you want to see something that actually did a pretty good job of portraying there was a guy using an acoustic coupler and all this stuff. But I mean, it was just such a. I thought,
Doug, that's not what we're talking about. Where do you fall in your top 3, Doug? Come on now.
Oh, for me, it's sneakers. I saw War Games at the theater when it came out, and that is probably more from my era. But I never thought it was that accurate because I had problems with the kid having all this equipment and all this stuff. I just loved Sneakers. I thought it was this really fine movie that truly looked at the kind of stuff that I had been doing at work.
In terms of actors and actresses in Sneakers, I will give that movie, without a doubt, number one in terms of the talent.
Yeah,
and the actors
Robert
and
Redford, Dan Aykroyd.
Ben
Kingsley,
and
Kingsley.
Just a thing for Sneakers. Well, I think the number one thing that I love, the rooftop scene, Larry, in Sneakers, where Ben Kingsley does the monologue where he says it's all about the information
body.
Will never ever be outdated. It never will. Like they captured that perfectly.
So two things real quick. If I had to pick my order, Sneakers, War Games, Hackers.
Yeah.
But the hackers thing that Paul that you mentioned about the interfaces ruin it and the plague ruins it. You think about that time though, and the interfaces were what the future was hoping to be. Like that's where they saw.
Oh, a vote for the interfaces not being as bad. Yeah, I like that, Larry.
It's forward thinking.
That's how where they saw we were going to go, and the plague. That's how, in many cases, the hackers perceived themselves. These larger-than-life characters that had this facade.
Wow. Some great points for hackers, Larry. I'm going to add that to my repertoire of solidifying hackers as my number
not just
one.
A good-looking face.
I love it though. But also the fact that the plague is very animate. That he be referred to as the plague. I think that's another interesting aspect where he wants to be referred to as his hacker handle of something evil, that he wants to be that super villain, right? Is another interesting aspect in the script of that movie.
Well, to me, it was Hackers is a psychological examination of sort of the world of hacking. Sneakers is a hard look at the kind of things people might actually have done, and War Games is kind of a Hollywood fantasy about it.
I'm not sure War Games was a Hollywood. President Reagan watched War Games and had a meeting with his staff.
Well, I'm not saying it's not realistic. I'm just saying it was to me a more Hollywood. It's a more Hollywood representation of the whole thing in terms of it's this kid and it's good versus evil. And
War Games also has the pre-coked out Ali Sheedy. Which is, it's got that
there
going
is
for
that.
it.
Yeah, no, I know, and that is my
that
era.
was a twitchy thing, by the way. When we look at the past 15 years of Security Weekly, if there's one line that sticks out, that's got to be top 5 of Twitchy pointing out that it is pre-coked out Ali Sheedy in War Games.
Yes, it is.
So that is some insight there that I could never replicate. That only Twitchy could really. Articulate on this show.
So one other comment on hackers.
Yes, Jeff.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well,
no, Jeff, go.
Okay. Well, I agree with the points that have been raised about hackers in terms of the good things about it. Unfortunately for me, the bad things about it just sort of tipped the scale a little bit. But my sociological question, though, is. Given that it was 1995, was it really reflecting hacker culture, or was it reflecting, to some degree, teen angst, which was a huge theme of many movies in the 80s? Teen angst, sort of the disenfranchised, the generation that sticking it to the man, not trusting the establishment. Was it all extensions of that? And it just, it was that kind of personification put into a hacker context,
it embodied that rebellious spirit that many of us embody as hackers. That me in 1995, being a teenager, right. Also embodied, which I think is why it relates to me, based on your comment, Jeff, on the age thing, and because I think some of the things that make me excited when I watch that in the spirit of the rebelliousness is the kind of revenge, right? The pool on the roof must have had a leak, right? Like if there was ever a line that was like, yes, I can hack and take revenge. And I'm not saying people should do that. Like you always hack with permission, right? But when we watch it on screen, I still to this day, like, you know, the hair on the back of my neck sticks up and I get really excited when I hear that line because it embodies that really rebellious spirit when they attack the FBI agent and put an ad in the personals that he's into weird sex things. Like that's the sticking it to the man rebellious spirit that again, interfaces aside that it captures.
For my generation, for me, being in high school in the 70s, that movie would have been Animal House, because I was still a teenager in the 80s.
Great film.
I would say Breakfast Club.
Two of the greatest films, really, in my opinion, of all time, Jeff.
So Paul, to add to our list of hacker movies, sort of way down towards the end, and we start thinking about that rebellious subculture and some of those types of things. You mentioned that about that. You know, Jeff brought up about the rebellious subculture and so forth. I'd add to that list, "Pump Up the Volume" with Christian Slater.
That was a great one. Great one.
Yep. Because, you know, the whole, you know, the hacking of the radio, the pirate radio station, the thumbing the nose at society, and then moving that to the Jeep to avoid FCC detection, so it was mobile and triangulation was difficult. Yeah, I can smell a lie like a fart.
Honorable mention to Footloose.
I think there's a real opportunity for us to sit down as a group and talk about hacker movies. Maybe there's an episode dedicated to each one in some kind of recording, because I think that our collective experience and collective opinions and feelings about all of these films are, for some reason, I think really important to share. With our audience. Both really fun to talk. I mean, but also self-serving, really fun to talk about. But I also think a really engaging conversation, and hopefully it helps people in some way to talk about our kind of perspective of these films and the emotions that they invoked when we watched these films based on our experience.
So I'm voting for Security Weekly Science Theater 3000 format.
Yay! I'm there.
Getting all of us in a room, a virtual room, and watching these films.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So there was
streamed via Twitch.
I read an article once along these lines where there were film students that got together in a theater and watched Pulp Fiction. And at any given time, anyone in the audience could stand up and pause the film and express their opinions or have a voice about what was happening.
It lasted 9 years.
And it lasted 9 years, right? But like just knowing that happened, I think there's a real opportunity for us to do that.
I think so.
We never get past the Angelina Jolie boob scene.
Well, that comes at the end in Hackers, which is fortunate for us, Larry.
Fortunate for everybody.
Yes.
And Lee's asking...
Lee, I'm sorry. Lee, I know we're running late on time, but Lee, I know. I feel like you have something to say.
Yeah, I had just two quick things. One is we talked about there's a relatability of the hacking in the movie that makes it more or less valuable to all of us based on what our experience is. And it'd be interesting to incorporate that in the conversation, as well as I always find it interesting when the movies try to incorporate a hacking term visually. For example, if you remember Swordfish, and they were doing a Hydra, and they made a snake on 6 different monitors, and it was like missed the point, but they were trying to graphically depict
malware.
Simple concepts. I thought that might be interesting to look into too. It'd be an interesting conversation where things fall short. What they're trying to do.
In conjunction with Black Hat. Black Hat. Where they were hacking ICS and they had to kind of show how it burned out the circuits, and they were, doing something kinetically physical to a device via, virtual.
Live free or die. Live free or die hard. Yeah, live free or die hard falls in that category.
Because in 1995, we were running crack, and it's just not fun to just sit there and watch a shell.
Right.
Watching things.
Well, I mean, Jeff, if you were running crack, it was probably a hell of a lot more exciting than that. Oh, wait, not that kind of crack.
All I have to say is spandex, it's a privilege, not a right.
Right.
Larry, take us out. Please.
I've got the pictures to prove it. Over and out.